My family skipped my wedding saying they got the date mixed up. But that same night, they were front row at my brother's golf event. Didn't say a word. Then my dad asked for help a week later, and I cut him off cold. By morning, Mom wouldn't stop calling. I didn't notice the missing faces right away. Not until I turned to face the crowd and saw the first 3 rows empty. My flowers trembled in my hand. Everyone else was standing, smiling, clapping. My husband looked at me like I was the only person in the world. But behind him, there were 12 chairs that should have been filled by my family. My mom, my dad, my brother, all gone. People started whispering. I heard my maid of honor say something about maybe a delayed flight or a medical emergency. Nobody wanted to believe what was obvious. They just didn't show. I smiled for the photos anyway. I gave my speech. I danced with my husband and pretended I didn't see the gap in the room. But inside, it felt like something had died. It wasn't until the hotel suite, after midnight, when I took off my heels and finally checked my phone, that I saw it, the proof. A photo on Instagram. My brother, grinning in the front row of the Nathan Cole Invitational. A giant golf banner behind him, my mom next to him holding a drink, my dad laughing beside her. Not a word to me all day. Not a text, not a call. Just a selfie under the caption, "Proud family moment." I stared at that post until the story timer ran out and the photo vanished. My husband didn't say a thing when I showed him. He just sat beside me and whispered, "I'm sorry." Sorry didn't cut it, because they didn't get the date wrong. They didn't forget. They chose to skip my wedding for a damn golf tournament. And the worst part, I still paid their bills that month. By the time my dad texted me a week later, "Hey, can we talk? I could use your help." Something inside me had snapped clean in half. I didn't answer. Not him, not my mom's 15 missed calls that followed. But I listened to her voicemail. And that's when the story stopped being sad and started getting dark. Because in her chirpy, fake sweet voice, my mom said they'd gotten the date mixed up. And then, without even pausing, she asked if I could chip in for my brother's birthday present, a custom golf driver worth $1,400. That was the moment I stopped feeling hurt and started feeling something else. A week later, she texted again, "We'd still love for you to come to the party." Maybe just the driver. That alone would mean the world to him. They wanted me there. They wanted my money. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I replied, "I'll be there, and I'll bring a gift." They didn't know it yet, but that was the beginning of the end. Before the wedding, before the golf tournament, before all the silence, my family looked perfect from the outside. We were the Coles from Knoxville, Tennessee. Country club members, perfect lawn, matching Christmas sweaters. My mom, Linda, had this constant pageant smile like she was permanently posing for a photo. My dad, Robert, cared about 2 things: his reputation and my brother, Nathan. Nathan was the golden one, the future pro golfer. My parents' entire lives revolved around his tournaments, his sponsors, his Instagram posts. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one who worked full-time, paid my own bills, and eventually paid theirs. It started small, covering the electric bill when Dad's hours got cut. Then the mortgage one month when Mom said they were in between deposits. By the time I got engaged, I was paying nearly everything. Their Wi-Fi, the phone plan, Dad's truck repairs, Nathan's insurance. It was like they expected it, like it was part of my job as the responsible one. When I announced my engagement, Mom's first question wasn't, "Who's the lucky guy?" It was, "Where are you having it?" I told her, "An outdoor vineyard just outside Nashville." She frowned like I'd said I was getting married in a parking lot. "Our family has always used the country club," she said. "It's tradition." Dad nodded in agreement. Nathan didn't even look up from his phone. He just smirked and said, "Figures you'd want something weird." That's when I realized I was planning a wedding my family had already decided to hate. When I didn't give in, things started to rot. Mom forgot to go dress shopping with me. Dad said he wouldn't walk me down the aisle if it was some field in the dirt. Nathan texted me once during those months. It was to ask if I'd already booked the photographer, because he might know someone cheaper. I stopped replying. I stopped updating them about anything. Still, I kept paying the bills. Even when they stopped calling, I paid. I told myself it was just until after the wedding. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd show up anyway. That when the big day came, they'd sit in that front row smiling, proud, pretending the last few months hadn't been cold and cruel. But they didn't. They made their choice. And still, part of me, the stupid, hopeful part, thought they'd reach out after the wedding to apologize. That's why I picked up my phone when Dad texted a week later. But it wasn't about the wedding. It was about money. That's when it clicked for me. The family that skipped my wedding didn't see me as a daughter or a sister anymore. I was an ATM that also happened to have a pulse. So when Mom called about Nathan's birthday party and the $1,400 driver, I smiled. For the first time in my life, I felt something that wasn't guilt or heartbreak. I felt clarity. If they wanted a show, I'd give them one. And I already knew the perfect stage, the country club that once told me my wedding was too casual for their standards. The party invitation came 2 days later, a formal digital evite with gold trim and golf balls as the background. It said, "Celebrating Nathan Cole's 23rd birthday, Country Club Ballroom. Semi-formal, family and friends welcome." No apology, no mention of the wedding they'd ditched. Just a smiling photo of Nathan holding a golf trophy. I almost laughed. It was like my family was daring me to keep pretending everything was fine, so I played along. I texted my mom back, "I'll be there, I'll bring a gift." That single line sent her into a flurry of emojis and exclamation points. I could practically feel her relief through the screen. Maybe she thought this meant I'd forgiven them, that I was sliding back into the role I'd always played, the one who kept the peace, paid the bills, and never made waves. They had no idea. I spent the next few days preparing. Not for the party, but for the reveal. I withdrew $700 in cash, exactly half of what they'd hinted they wanted me to contribute toward Nathan's new golf driver. I put it in a plain black envelope and slipped it into a small silver gift bag. Nothing fancy, nothing sentimental. Just money. Enough to make them comfortable, to make them think I'd caved again. Then I wrote something on a small card, not a note exactly, just a single line. "Half of what you asked for, the rest you'll get in person." Saturday came too fast. My husband offered to come with me, but I told him no. This was something I needed to do alone. When I pulled into the country club parking lot, I just sat there for a minute. The same manicured hedges, the same iron gate I'd been told wasn't suitable for my wedding photos. I watched families step out of their SUVs, laughing, holding neatly wrapped gifts. Everyone looked exactly the way my parents wanted to be seen, polished, proud, perfect. Inside, the ballroom glittered with white tablecloths, champagne glasses, and Nathan's smug face plastered on a banner above the stage. My dad was near the bar, shaking hands with someone in a blazer. My mom was at the gift table, rearranging presents so the expensive ones were up front. When she saw me, her face froze for half a second, then she smiled wide. "Sweetheart, you made it," like nothing had happened. Nathan came over next, wearing a navy suit and a ridiculous little gold paper crown. "Didn't think you'd actually come," he said, grinning. "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, handing him the silver bag. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. His eyes already told me he thought he'd won. For the next hour, I floated. I chatted with strangers, smiled for photos, drank champagne I didn't taste. I waited. Because I knew how these events went: speeches, toasts, applause. My mom would never resist the chance to show off her perfect family again. And right on cue, after Nathan's self-congratulatory speech about overcoming a tough year, she took the mic. She thanked the guests, beamed like she was hosting a fundraiser, and then said the words that lit the fuse. "And before we cut the cake, I'd like to invite someone very special up to say a few words, my daughter, Emily." Everyone clapped politely. She thought I'd say something nice, that I'd fall in line. Smile, wave, hand over my little gift, and disappear quietly. But as I walked toward that microphone, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Because if my family loved pretending in public, then I was about to make sure the truth went public too. When I took the mic, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The silence came on its own, rippling through the room as every head turned toward me. I smiled, steady, polite, cold. "I'm Emily Cole," I started. "Nathan's sister." A few polite nods, a couple of murmured hellos. I glanced at my parents. My mom's smile was tight, her eyes wide with warning. My dad's face had that rigid look men get when they realize they can't control the narrative anymore. "I just wanted to thank everyone for coming tonight," I said, keeping my voice even. "It's nice to finally see so many familiar faces, especially some of the ones I missed at my wedding last week." The air shifted. Someone dropped their fork. I kept going. I got married last Saturday, if you didn't know. It was a beautiful day, vineyard outside Nashville, amazing food, live music. I paid for everything myself. My husband's family came in from 3 different states. My friends showed up. Everyone did. Except my family. You could feel the tension spread like a slow wave. I thought maybe something happened, I said. A car accident, an emergency, anything. But then later that night, I saw a photo on Instagram. Nathan, my mom. My dad, all sitting front row at his golf tournament. The same day, the same time. There was a quiet gasp from somewhere in the crowd. My mom's face drained of color. I wasn't shaking anymore. I wasn't going to bring it up, I continued. But then my mom called a few days later. She said they'd mixed up the date. And then she asked if I could help buy Nathan a new golf driver for his birthday. A $1,400 one. People started whispering now awkward, sharp murmurs between bites of cake they'd suddenly lost their appetite for. Nathan's face flushed red. So tonight, I said, I did bring a gift. Half of what you asked for, $700, enough to cover part of that driver. But the real gift is something better. I paused, long enough for every eye to lock on me. The real gift is honesty. Because for years I paid my parents' bills, their mortgage, their car, Nathan's insurance. I kept them afloat while they ignored me, and when it came time for them to show up for me, they didn't bother. Not even for one day that actually mattered. The room went dead silent. All the smiles vanished. I looked at Nathan. You wanted a gift? You're welcome. Everyone here knows what kind of son, brother, and man you are. I placed the mic back on the stand, turned, and walked out. No shouting, no tears, just the echo of my heels across that perfect marble floor. Behind me, I heard my mom's voice, trembling, Emily, wait. But I didn't. By the time I hit the parking lot, I felt lighter than I had in years. Then my phone started buzzing, first Nathan, then Mom, then Dad. I ignored all of it until I was home, sitting on my couch in silence. When I finally listened to Nathan's voicemail, I almost laughed. He didn't apologize. He screamed. He said I'd humiliated him, ruined his sponsorship, made him look bad in front of important people. He ended it with, "You'll regret this." And the crazy part, he wasn't wrong, just not in the way he thought. Because by the next morning, something would happen that I didn't see coming. Something that would change everything. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. 32 missed calls, 15 texts, 2 voicemails from Mom, 1 from Dad, and 1 from Nathan that started with, "You think this is funny," and ended with a slur I hadn't heard him use since high school. My mom's voice, though, that was the one that got to me. She didn't sound angry. She sounded desperate. She said, "Emily, please just call us back. You don't know what you've done." That line sat in my gut like poison. I hadn't done anything but tell the truth. So why did it sound like something had exploded on their end? By noon, I found out. One of my old classmates, a mutual friend of Nathan's, texted me a screenshot. The golf tournament sponsors had seen the video of my speech. Someone had recorded it and posted it on TikTok. It had over 80,000 views. The caption read, "Girl finds out her family skipped her wedding for her brother's golf event and confronts them publicly." In the comments, people shredded them. My mom's country club friends unfollowed her on Facebook. The tournament's official account quietly removed every photo of Nathan. He wasn't their golden boy anymore. I thought I'd feel vindicated. But instead, I just felt numb. Then came the knock at my door. When I looked through the window, I saw her, Mom. Sunglasses, perfect hair, holding her purse like it was armor. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. She didn't wait to be invited in. She walked straight into my kitchen like it still belonged to her. Her voice was calm, too calm. "We need to talk." I didn't offer her coffee. I just stood there, arms crossed. She started slow, said she never wanted things to get so bad, that they didn't think I'd actually say anything. That Nathan was crushed. That Dad hadn't been sleeping. I stayed silent. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. She slid it across the counter. "Nathan wanted you to have this back." I opened it. Inside was the same $700 I'd given him. "He doesn't want your money anymore," she said. "You humiliated him. One of his sponsors pulled out. The coach says he might not compete this season. You've destroyed his chances." I could feel the bitterness rising, but I didn't say a word. That's when her voice cracked, just a little, and she said, "Your father lost his job 4 months ago." I blinked. "What?" "He didn't tell anyone," she continued. Not me, not Nathan. He was gambling online, trying to make up the difference. All that money you sent, he was using it to cover his losses. It hit me like a punch. Every electric bill, every mortgage payment, every favor, they hadn't gone to survival. They'd gone into a bottomless pit of lies. I leaned back against the counter. So you came here for what? More money? She shook her head. No, I came to tell you the truth before it comes out another way. The country club's reviewing our membership. People are talking. Nathan's coach told him he's a PR risk. Robert's panicking. We're losing everything. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes and whispered, You wanted honesty, Emily. Here it is, you tore the mask off, and now there's nothing left underneath. For the first time in my life, I saw my mother afraid, not of me, but of losing the image she'd spent her whole life polishing. I should have felt sorry for her. I didn't, instead I felt something colder, satisfaction, but she wasn't done. She said one more thing before leaving. Nathan's not handling it well. He's been saying things about you, things that could ruin more than your family. I froze. What things? She just looked at me and said, You'll see. Then she walked out. And that's when I realized the story wasn't over. The real fallout hadn't even started yet. 2 days after my mother's visit, I got the email. The subject line read, Urgent regarding your employer. It was from HR. At first, I thought it was spam, but when I opened it, I felt my stomach drop. They'd received a complaint, an anonymous tip claiming I'd been embezzling funds from the small marketing firm where I'd worked for 4 years. Attached were 3 screenshots of my Venmo history, showing transfers from my personal account to my parents, labeled things like utilities, mortgage, truck repairs. Only someone who knew the full story could twist that into theft. Nathan, I knew it the second I saw the timestamps. They lined up perfectly with the months I'd helped pay their bills. My little brother, the same one I'd supported through every failure and every missed tuition payment, had reported me to my own job. The irony was almost funny. Almost. I spent that night combing through old messages, screenshots, every proof I could find that those payments were personal, not company money. My husband sat beside me, furious but calm. He's trying to burn you down because he's sinking, he said. He was right. The next morning, I walked into HR with my head high. I explained everything. I showed them my private bank statements, separate from the company account. They believed me eventually. But the damage was done. Rumors had started. My boss was polite but distant when I left his office. That kind of suspicion doesn't just fade. When I got home, I called Nathan. He didn't answer. So I texted him, You crossed a line. 10 minutes later, he replied, You started it. That's when I understood the level of delusion I was dealing with. Nathan didn't think he'd done anything wrong. In his mind, I'd embarrassed him, so this was balance. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my husband, scrolling through my phone, shaking. He's not just stupid, I said quietly. He's dangerous. He nodded slowly. Then it's time to stop reacting, time to finish it. He was right again. So I started planning not out of anger but precision. I gathered screenshots, texts, emails, and every receipt of every payment I'd ever made for my family. Mortgage statements in my name. Insurance bills for Nathan's car. My dad's dental work receipt, all charged to my card. I wasn't going to destroy them with words this time. I was going to use the same tool they worshipped. Reputation. By Thursday, I had the plan. Nathan had a local news interview lined up about his golf setback, one of those pity segments to help him rebuild his image. My mom had told me about it weeks ago, bragging that it would show resilience. I made one anonymous submission to the same reporter, attaching every document I had. The subject line was simple. Story behind the golfer's fall from grace. Then I waited. 3 days later, the segment aired. And what aired wasn't the comeback piece they expected. It was a 5-minute exposé about a family under investigation for financial fraud, an unemployed father gambling away mortgage funds, a son whose sponsorships were pulled for ethical violations, and a daughter who'd been funding them for years. They blurred my name, but everyone knew. By nightfall, the story had hit local Facebook groups. My mom's face, pale, stunned, was frozen mid-interview as she tried to defend herself. Nathan's social media accounts went private. My phone stayed silent. No calls, no texts, nothing. For the first time in my life, they had no leverage left, no image to hide behind, no more pretending. I thought that would be the end. But then, 3 days later, my mom showed up again. No makeup, no sunglasses, no armor, just a folded check in her hand and a look I'd never seen before, not guilt. Not fear, something closer to surrender. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. And that's when she told me why they'd done it. My mom sat at my kitchen table like she'd shrunk overnight. Her hair was flat, her eyes dull, her nails chipped. She looked like someone who'd been running from a fire and finally realized the house was gone. "I owe you the truth," she said, barely above a whisper. I didn't speak. I just folded my arms and waited. She took a breath. "It wasn't just about Nathan's golf. It was about the money. Your father, he didn't just gamble, he borrowed, from people you don't borrow from." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" She looked down, twisting her wedding ring. "Last spring, he took out cash loans to cover his losses. When that didn't work, he started telling people that you were helping, that you'd agreed to take on the debt if anything happened. He said you were family, that you'd never let us drown." I blinked. "He used my name," she nodded. "He used everything, your credit, your reputation. He thought if things got bad enough, you'd step in like you always do. And when you didn't, he panicked. That's why we didn't come to the wedding." I stared at her. "You skipped my wedding because of his lies?" Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't look at me. "We weren't at the tournament for Nathan," she whispered. "We were meeting one of the men your father borrowed from. The golf event was a cover. He thought if he could show we were still stable, still part of the club, they'd hold off on collecting." I didn't breathe. "He said if you found out, you'd never forgive him," she continued. "That's why he told Nathan to post the photos, to make it look normal, to keep you out of it." I felt the world tilt. "So all that time," I said slowly, "you let me think you'd just chosen him over me, but really you were trying to hide a debt that wasn't mine." She nodded once. "It wasn't just him, Emily. We all knew what he was doing. And we let him because he kept saying you'd fix it. That's what you do, you fix everything." I sat there in silence, my heart pounding in my ears. The worst part wasn't that my dad had lied. It was that they'd all believed it, that my parents and my brother had built their safety on the assumption that I'd bail them out forever. When I finally spoke, my voice came out like glass breaking. "You skipped my wedding to protect your secret. You watched me pay your bills, cover your debts, and you still didn't tell me the truth. You used me, Mom." Her tears came fast then. "I know, and we lost everything anyway." She slid a folded check across the table. "It's from Nathan," she said. "He wanted to give back what you gave him at the party, said he didn't earn it, that maybe someday you could forgive him." I didn't touch it. She stood up, shoulders trembling, and said the line that cut me clean through. "You were never the forgotten one, Emily. You were the insurance policy, you always were." And with that, she left. I sat alone in the silence, staring at that check. $700, my money, my lesson, my line in the sand. It took everything in me not to burn it right then. Because now I finally understood the truth. It was never about love, never about loyalty. It was about dependence. They didn't betray me because they didn't care. They betrayed me because they thought they owned me. And that was the moment I decided to end it, for real this time. I didn't see them for 3 weeks after that night. The house felt quiet, almost sterile without their chaos bleeding into my life. For the first time in years, I wasn't checking my phone every few minutes for some new crisis. No urgent texts about bills, no emotional blackmail disguised as family concern. Just silence. And if he'd tied me to his mess, I wasn't going to let it rot my credit or my peace. So I did what he never thought I would. I hired an attorney. I handed over every document, every bank statement, every text showing that I was the one sending money, not receiving it. The lawyer didn't even blink. "We'll handle this quietly," she said. "But it won't be painless for them." Within a week, the letters went out. Official notices to every lender, every credit agency, every person who'd touched my name. The debts were under dispute. Fraud was being investigated. My father's signature was exposed. 2 weeks later, I got a call not from him but from my mom. Her voice was raw. "They froze the accounts," she said. "The house, the cars, it's all being reviewed." I didn't gloat. I didn't even speak. She whispered, "You really did it." I said, "No, Mom, you did." Then I hung up. After that, everything moved fast. The club revoked their membership. The friends they'd built their identities around stopped returning calls. Nathan lost what was left of his sponsorships. My dad took a job at a hardware store outside town. They'd built a life out of appearances, and I tore it down by doing the one thing they never believed I could, protecting myself. I thought I'd feel vindicated, but what I really felt was something heavier, colder, more final. Closure. The check my mom left me, the $700 I'd given at the party, sat untouched in my desk for a month. Then one night, I took it out, folded it once, and tucked it inside a plain envelope with a note that said, "Debt settled." I mailed it to their address. No return label. 3 days later, I got a text from an unknown number. It was from Nathan. It said, "You win." I stared at it for a while, then deleted it. Because this was never about winning. It was about ending the cycle that kept me tied to people who only loved me when I was useful. Now I walk past that same country club every morning on my way to work. The gates are still there, polished and perfect, but the faces have changed. Sometimes I think about my mom's words, how I was the insurance policy. Maybe I was. But policies expire, and this one, I canceled it myself.